the first sign wasn't a lipstick mark. It wasn't a late-night text. It was a small, ordinary sentence that didn't belong in my life. "Tell me you got home safe." I heard it in a voice that wasn't mine, and I wasn't supposed to be there to hear it. My name is Caleb. I'm 39 and I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I manage operations for a mid-sized logistics company, mostly spreadsheets, deadlines, and solving problems before they become disasters. At least, that used to feel like my job. Later, I realized I'd been doing the same thing at home. My wife, Tessa, is 36. She's a pediatric occupational therapist. She's the kind of person who can make a nervous child laugh in 10 seconds, and the kind of woman strangers trust without knowing why. We'd been married for 9 years, together for 12. When people asked what made our marriage work, I used to say, "We're steady." Not exciting. Not dramatic. Just steady. We met at a friend's housewarming party, back when my biggest worry was whether I'd get a promotion and whether my car would survive another summer. Tessa had this habit of listening like you mattered, like she wasn't waiting for her turn to speak. That kind of attention is rare. I fell in love with it. I fell in love with it. I fell in love with her. We built a life that looked good from the outside. A small house in a quiet neighborhood. A dog named Milo who stole socks like it was his job. Sunday morning coffee on the porch. Movies we never finished because we'd fall asleep halfway through. And for a long time, I believed that was enough. The truth is, I depended on Tessa more than I admitted. Work was loud in my head. Constant. I carried it home and told myself it was normal. I told myself that being tired meant I was providing, and providing meant I was loving. Tessa didn't complain at first. She adjusted. She made space. She filled in the silence with her warmth. That's how it started to slip. Not with betrayal, with adaptation. Tessa joined a volunteer program at the Children's Hospital supporting families during long therapy recoveries. She said it helped her decompress. She said it made her feel useful beyond her job. I liked that about her. I always liked how she cared. She started talking about a parent she'd met there. A dad named Ethan. I didn't think much of it. Ethan's son is making progress. Ethan brought snacks for the staff. Ethan's been through a lot. It sounded like Tessa was proud of him, and I was proud of her for being the kind of person people leaned on. Then the conversations about Ethan became frequent, not romantic, not openly, just present. Somewhere in the middle of all that, I started noticing the emotional weather at home changing. Tessa laughed less around me, not because she was angry, because she seemed distracted, like her mind kept drifting to a place I couldn't follow. I tried to ignore it, because I didn't want to become the kind of husband who questioned everything. I didn't want to be insecure, so I chose the easier story. Tessa is tired. Work is hard. It's a phase. That was my emotionally wrong decision. I made her distance about my patience instead of our reality. The red flags were subtle. Tessa began taking longer routes when she ran errands. She started dressing with more intention, even on casual days, nothing flashy, just thoughtful. She'd put on perfume for a trip to the store. When I teased her, she'd smile and say, "I'm allowed to feel nice." And she was. But I also started noticing she'd come home and go straight to the bathroom to freshen up. She'd shower at odd times. She'd sit on the couch and scroll, then tilt her screen away, not in a sneaky way, more like protecting something private. It was death by 1,000 small shifts. One Friday, my company held a quarterly audit meeting that ran late. I came home after dark, exhausted. The living room was dim. The TV was on, but muted. Tessa was on the porch. I could see her through the glass door. She was facing away from the house, phone to her ear. Milo sat beside her, tail tapping slowly, like he was listening too. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. I just wanted to step outside and kiss her hello. But I paused when I heard her voice. It was soft, careful. Not the voice she used with me lately. "I know," she said. "I'm trying." Pause. I don't know how to keep doing this. Pause. And then the sentence that hit like cold water, "Tell me you got home safe." I stopped breathing. Not because the words were romantic, because they were intimate. Because that concern, gentle, attentive concern, was something I hadn't received from her in a long time. I pushed the door open. The porch light spilled over her face. Tessa turned quickly and her expression shifted so fast, it didn't have time to lie. Guilt. then surprise, then a forced normal. "Hey," she said, ending the call immediately. "Hey," I answered. My voice sounded calm, which felt wrong, like my body didn't know what to do yet. "Everything okay?" I asked. Tessa nodded too fast. "Yeah, just hospital stuff. Hospital stuff." The world's most convenient umbrella. I didn't press her. Not that night. I kissed her cheek. Went inside. Pet Milo. Acted like my life wasn't tilting. Waiter, in bed. Tessa lay on her side, facing away from me. Her phone lit up once, then again. I watched the light reflect off the wall. She didn't reach for it, but I could feel the tension in her shoulders, like a person trying not to move. That was the moment I realized something I didn't want to know. Tessa wasn't hiding a mistake. She was hiding a connection. I didn't confront her the next day either. Instead, I tried harder. Because that's what I'd always done. If something felt off, I fixed the schedule. I improved the system. I worked the problem. I planned a dinner reservation at a quiet place downtown. Tessa smiled politely. She thanked me. She showed up. She even laughed once, but it felt like watching an actress in a role she didn't audition for. At the end of dinner, I reached for her hand. She let me take it, but her fingers stayed stiff. I asked, "Are we okay?" And she said, "Of course." But her eyes didn't hold mine. A week passed. Then another. I started noticing the pattern of her volunteer shifts more closely. She'd come home later than expected. Not every time, just enough. One evening I came home early. The house was empty, but Milo was there, and he was restless pacing, whining softly, nails tapping on the floor. He only did that when Tessa was supposed to be home and wasn't. I checked my phone. No messages, no missed calls, just silence. I told myself not to spiral, so I did the emotionally wrong thing again. I drove to the children's hospital, not to accuse, not to fight, to reassure myself, to confirm I was paranoid. The parking garage smelled like concrete and old rain. Inside, the hospital was bright in a way that made everything feel exposed. I asked at the volunteer desk if Tessa was still there. The woman behind the desk looked at the schedule. "She signed out about 40 minutes ago," she said. My stomach tightened. Did she leave alone? The woman blinked. I'm not sure. I walked out into the lobby, heart hammering, and then I saw them. Not kissing, not touching in any dramatic way, just standing near the cafe, side by side, talking quietly. Tessa and a man I recognized from the few photos she'd shown me, Ethan. Tall, tired-looking, the kind of man who carried grief in his posture. He was holding 2 coffees. He handed one to Tessa like it was normal, like it was practiced. Tessa laughed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't flirtatious. It was worse. It was familiar, comfortable. A laugh that said, "I feel safe here." I stood behind a pillar like a coward. I watched them talk. Tessa touched his elbow briefly when he said something, a light gesture that landed like a punch. He looked at her the way people look at someone who gets them, and then he said something I couldn't hear, and she dropped her gaze, smiling softly like she didn't want her face to reveal too much. They walked toward the exit together, still not touching, but moving as one unit, as if their bodies already knew the rhythm. I followed at a distance, not proud of it, not pretending it was noble. I just couldn't stop myself. Outside, under the harsh glow of parking lot lights, Ethan stopped by his car. Tessa stood close to him, too close. He said something and she nodded, serious. Then he reached up. He didn't grab her. He didn't pull. He simply brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. Slow. Careful. Intimate. Tessa didn't flinch. She leaned into it like she'd been waiting. That's when it hit me fully. Not a suspicion. Not a fear. A fact. I turned away before they saw me. I walked back to my car, hands shaking so hard I could barely get the key into the ignition. On the drive home, I felt strangely calm. Like my mind had decided panic was useless. I kept thinking, this is happening. This is real. And each time I thought it, my chest tightened in a new way. Tessa came home an hour later. She walked in quietly, took off her shoes, saw me sitting at the kitchen table. She froze. "Hey," she said, voice small. I nodded. Hey. She set her bag down. The silence stretched. I could hear Milo breathing in the corner. I said, I went to the hospital. Tessa's face drained of color. I saw you, I continued, steady. With Ethan. Her mouth opened, closed. She looked like someone trying to decide whether the truth could still be avoided. Finally, she whispered, Caleb. I held up a hand. No, I said, not loud, just firm. I'm not doing the part where you call me by my name like it fixes anything. Tessa's eyes filled with tears. It's not what you think, she said. I let out a slow breath. That line, I said, is always exactly what it is. She sank into a chair, hands trembling. It started with the hospital, she whispered. He was struggling. His son's recovery was hard, and I was there, and I listened, and it felt good to be needed. Needed. The word landed in my gut. Because I knew that feeling. I lived on it. And I hadn't realized I'd stopped giving it to her. How long? I asked. Tessa stared at the table. A year, she said. My throat tightened. A year, I repeated softly. It wasn't physical. She said quickly, like she'd rehearsed it. No, I said, voice sharper now. It was worse. It was you choosing him emotionally while still coming home to me like I was. Furniture. Tessa flinched. I didn't mean... I cut her off. You didn't mean what? I asked. To build a second relationship right next to me? Tessa began to cry then, silently. I felt invisible, she said, and I hated that my first instinct was to defend myself, to explain my work stress, my exhaustion, my intentions. But intentions didn't matter. Impact did. So what now? I asked. Tessa looked up. Her eyes were red. I don't know, she said honestly. That honesty hurt more than any lie, because it meant she was still torn. I nodded slowly. Okay, I said, and then I did something I never thought I'd do. I got up, opened the drawer, and placed my wedding ring on the table. Not dramatically, not violently, just decisively. Tessa gasped. Caleb, please. I shook my head. I can't be the person who begs to be chosen, I said quietly. I've done enough of that without realizing it. Tessa's shoulders shook. I love you, she whispered. I believed she believed it. But love without loyalty is just a feeling, and feelings don't protect you. I said, if you want him, choose him, but don't keep me here as your safety net. Tessa looked like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. Because there was nothing she could say that would undo a year. That night, I slept in the guest room. I stared at the ceiling and felt something changing inside me. Not just pain. A shift in identity. I had always seen myself as stable, reliable, the man who could handle anything. Now, I saw myself differently. As someone who ignored his own needs. As someone who equated silence with peace. As someone who thought being steady meant being unshakable. But steadiness can become denial. Over the next week, Tessa tried. She offered counseling. She said she'd stop seeing Ethan outside the hospital. She promised transparency. But I couldn't stop hearing her voice on the porch. Tell me you got home safe. That sentence had become a doorway, and I could not pretend it didn't exist. 2 weeks later, I asked Tessa to move out temporarily. She didn't fight it. She packed a suitcase with quiet hands. Milo watched her with confused eyes. At the door, she turned back. I'm sorry, she said. And for the first time, I felt the full weight of it. Not anger. Grief. After she left, the house felt too big. Every room echoed. Even the quiet felt loud. I stopped trying to solve it. Instead, I started listening to myself. I realized how often I'd used work as an excuse to avoid intimacy. How often I'd assumed Tessa's love would stay because it always had. How often I'd taken her steadiness as a guarantee. Weeks turned into months. Tessa and I talked occasionally about practical things, bills, Milo's vet appointments, the house. We didn't talk about Ethan. We didn't need to. He sat between every sentence. One afternoon, I went for a walk alone and ended up at a park we used to visit. Couples sat on benches. Kids ran in circles. Normal life, happening without permission. I sat down and felt something settle in me. Not peace, clarity. I understood then that betrayal isn't just about what your partner does. It's also about what you let yourself accept, what you normalize, what you call fine because you're afraid of what not fine would require. A few days later, I told Tessa I wanted a divorce. My voice didn't shake. But my hands did, Tessa cried. She said she never wanted to lose me. And I said, you already did. A year ago. I'm just catching up. After the paperwork, after the separation of accounts and furniture and shared routines, I stood in the empty living room and felt hollow. But hollow isn't the end. It's a beginning. I started therapy. Not to villainize Tessa. Not to justify myself. To understand why I had made love into a background task. To learn how to be present, not just reliable. I started cooking again. I called friends I'd been too busy for. I took Milo on long walks and let the quiet settle without fear. Months later, I ran into Tessa at a grocery store. She looked tired. Not guilty tired. Life tired. She asked how I was. I said, I'm different. She nodded slowly. I am too, she said. We stood there for a second. Two people who had once promised forever and now shared only history. Then we said goodbye. That night, back in my house now just mine, I looked at the porch where I'd first heard that sentence. Tell me you got home safe. I realized something important. Steady doesn't mean silent. Love doesn't survive on routines alone. And you can't build a life on someone else's attention while leaving your partner starving. The betrayal changed my marriage, but it also changed me. It made me stop performing stability and start practicing honesty, even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt, because the hardest lesson I learned is this. If you have to compete for the person you married, you already lost. And the most respectful thing you can do for yourself is to stop pretending you didn't.